day is Tuesday, April 29th, 2025. It is 5:30 p.m. My name is Carl Ye. I'm the chair for this committee. I'm going to do a quick roll call. Gino Grimaldi.
Here.
Stephen Wheeler.
Here.
Gary Wildish.
Here.
Susan Cox. Linda Lynch. Pete Knox.
Here.
Charlie Conrad.
Here.
Kelly Sutherland. Okay. Darvin Fowler.
Here.
Oh, here. Online? Hi, Darvin.
Online, yes.
Lawrence Green.
Here.
Thank you. Jason Williams.
Online.
Oh, thank you, Jason. Michelle Weber.
Here.
And Heather Murphy.
Here.
Very good. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. We'll start with public comment. Do we have anyone who is registered for public comment?
We do not.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, we'll go ahead and proceed straight to business. Our first on our agenda is a legislative update.
Flawless. Hi, good evening, folks. So my name is Sam Kelly-Petrocchi. I'm the Government Relations Manager for LTD. I'm just going to do a quick update for you all on some of the state and federal policies and issues, give you lay of the land before going into the budget so you know where some of our state and federal funding streams are at. Starting with federal, back in April, Susan Cox, Jameson, and myself went to DC for our annual lobbying trip. On this trip, we met with Department of Transportation, Federal Transit Administration, White House Intergovernmental Relations, legislative offices, Bus Coalition, a variety of folks. For the majority of these meetings, we were hearing sort of the same lines of, we're not trying to hold up your funding, we want to get funds out to you. But with the understanding of there's a new president, there are new rules in play, it needs to meet his administrative goals and priorities. And so a lot of folks, we applied for grants under President Biden, under President Trump. Now the priorities are different. Look toward the executive orders. That's where you're going to see a lot of where the priorities need to be. So we were encouraged to, if we have grants that are outstanding, reapply. Department of Transportation especially is looking through all their grants one at a time and kind of looking through that executive order lens again of what's a priority and what's not. Other agencies are doing broader kind of cuts. So in a sense, I think this DOT review is a little bit nicer. It gives grant by grant review, chance to resubmit, reapply for it, and kind of go forward from there. The other sort of key takeaway federally, Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy has a couple memos that went out. His first memo when he was appointed highlighted a couple really important things that were DOT priorities. It was access to jobs and health, the whole of human life. We heard that term a few times, while also reducing negative impacts of transportation. So pollution, costs, safety, key priorities. These are things LTD does already, kind of our bread and butter. We felt kind of reaffirmed to hear those things. Okay, we know how to play this game. This president shouldn't be a huge change up in that regard. And that first memo also included some new language that we're still working through, and that was this focus on high marriage rates and birth rates. We haven't seen that in grant language yet. That was sort of issued out there as a priority area. And when we were in DC, we brought up to a few different folks, and a lot of them said, yep, we saw that too. Don't know what it means yet either. So until it's in a grant, it's not totally real. We can't react to it yet. If there's questions of, is it a nationwide level? Is it state? Do divorce rates to subtract from marriage rates? Is like a net togetherness rate? So I think lots of questions to be asked still federally in that regard. And then his second memo just came out about a week ago. To me, read more as like a reminder, sort of follow the rules, got to play ball with President Trump, really focusing on two priority areas. It's the ending of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. And then a reminder, you got to follow all federal laws, federal compliance, which includes compliance with ICE if they come through. Both processes LTD is working through, things that we're aware of on our radar to keep up with. Statewide, the big focus for funding and for this group is our transportation package. So a package is a collection of lots of bills and policies under a single theme, in this case, transportation. We do one every 8 years. The package right now is a framework, which if that sounds vague, it kind of is. It's not officially a bill yet. It's a framework of ideas. Lots of folks have read it, reacted to it in a variety of ways, which is good. You want engagement, you want people talking about it. We're about 2 months out till the session ends. In that framework, there is a piece for transit funding, the statewide transportation improvement funds, or the STIF. You hear about it a lot tonight for sure. The framework increases STIF from 0.1% to 0.18%. Again, STIF is our payroll tax across the state of Oregon. Transit associations were pushing for a 0.5% increase over 4 biennium or 8 years. So a 0.1% increase over every couple of years. So we're still working towards that number. That 0.5 would give access to increasing transit options, a diversity of programming, while also reducing potential layoffs or cuts that other agencies are facing in the more immediate future. Like I said, we're still about 2 months out, so plenty of time for me to be up in Salem negotiating these with our legislators, having conversations, finding common ground. So those are probably the highlights I had for this evening. Happy to answer questions or pass it on.
Thank you for that update. Looking at this committee, any questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and proceed next to the fiscal year 2025-2026 budget process overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Pam Stratz. I'm the Director of Finance here at Lane Transit District, and I'm going to start out by talking about some of our key documents that we used to establish our financial plan. Starting at the left is the strategic business plan. LTD adopted its first strategic business plan for fiscal years 22 through 24. The strategic business plan bridges LTD's mission, vision, and values to our day-to-day operations. This agency-wide collaborative effort helps us focus on the most important outcomes to deliver and guides our agency and budget goals. The strategic business plan can be found on our website. Moving over to the right, the community investment plan, also known as CIP, provides the basis for our capital fund budget. It also impacts our general fund in that transfers for the non-grant portion of our projects come mainly from our general fund. In November of 24, the Board Finance Committee saw the first draft of the 26 through 35 CIP. A second draft of the CIP was reviewed at the February Budget Committee meeting with an overview will be presented tonight. The final proposed CIP will go to the board for adoption in June. The annual budget is prepared from previous year's results and trends, current year projections, and various economic assumptions. During the month of February, each department manager prepares a SWOT analysis and justification for presentation to the chiefs. Further review and revisions continue until the final proposed budget is completed. The proposed budget needs are then reconciled with our revenue estimates. This year, personnel services are based on actual current positions adjusted for anticipated needs. Materials and service costs are based on our actual plus an inflation factor, and program services are based on contracts and anticipated service needs. The capital budget, as mentioned before, is based on our CIP. The final document in our financial planning is the Long-Range Financial Plan, also known as LRFP. The LRFP is compiled from several years, 20 more than 20 now. It was 20 when I got here. And numerous economic estimations and assumptions. The proposed budget informs the Long-Range Financial Plan, and the assumptions are adjusted as necessary. The final LRFP will go to the board in June for adoption. So this is our budget process map. This diagram shows the various budget tasks and our timeline. Right now, we're at our April Budget Committee meeting spot where all three documents are presented. The committee will be taking action on the budget documents to either approve and move on to the board or to request changes and set another budget committee meeting. The next step, assuming no additional budget committee meetings, will be the budget hearing with the board set for May 21st to approve the budget. The final step is the board meeting on June 18th, where the budget is adopted, along with a resolution making appropriations, allowing funds to be spent in the new year. At the June board meeting, the long-range financial plan and the final community investment plan are also presented for adoption. There is no spending authority, just as a reminder, there's no spending authority granted with the long-range financial plan or community investment plan. Those documents are for planning purposes only. It's the appropriations resolution that actually gives us the authority to be able to spend money. Next one. Tonight, as a budget committee, we have some responsibilities according to Oregon law. The responsibilities of the Budget Committee are to review the budget document as proposed by the budget officer, obtain an understanding of the departments or programs included in the budget, and ultimately approve the budget for review and adoption by the board. In addition to Budget Committee member input, we also provide opportunities for the public to submit comments on the proposed budget. One opportunity for public comment was given tonight, and another opportunity will be provided on the May 21st budget hearing meeting. Written testimony can be submitted anytime from now through May 21st. Right now, I am going to turn it over to Joe McCormick, our Chief Development Officer, to present the Community Investment Plan.
All right, thanks, Pam. I'm Joe, Chief Development Officer. So we're requesting the Budget Committee approve the proposed 2026-2035 Community Investment Plan and refer it to the board for adoption. Much of what I'm going to cover tonight, you saw back in February as well. So it's pretty much the same plan, but we'll go over again how that was put together and answer any questions that you may have. Just as a reminder, the CIP includes both planned investments and resources needed to realize those investments over the 10-year horizon. And as Pam mentioned, while the CIP itself has no spending authority, it does inform our annual budget and for committing funds. So let's make sure I'm,
Oh, yeah, sorry, is that the right one?
we can go there, that's fine. We're just going to quickly touch on the plan development process, then a summary of the plan, and then I got a few project highlights for you that I kind of pulled out of the plan, but we can talk about any of the items that you'd like to tonight. All right. So this is the same framework that you saw back in February, which comes from the CIP policy adopted back in 2022. Projects originate from existing plans as well as internal and external sources for new investment or reinvestment. And those concepts are analyzed and vetted for cost, alignment with the guiding principles in that policy, and also including resources into the picture. I will mention that there are some areas for improvement in this process that we'd like to address in the next cycle, and that actually starts right after the end of this cycle this summer. But we would like to be stronger in terms of impacting our organizational goals in these projects. I think there's room to improve in our quality of cost analysis, improved integration into the organizational capacity. And so being able to better prioritize some of these projects, being sure that we can actually execute on them. I think there's some improvement that we can do there, as well as alignment with our soon-to-be new long-range mobility plan that our planning department is working on. So I look forward to this cycle next year as well. Next slide. So in your packet, there's a detailed list of projects. What you see on the screen here is a roll-up. I'm sorry. Okay. What you see here on the screen is a roll-up of all the projects. Just to kind of give you a quick summary. And again, there's been little change in the project list itself. And the projects, as you can see on the screen, are divided in two types of projects, improvement projects and state of good repair projects. Improvement projects increase investment in the community, adding additional services or user benefits, and state of good repair projects are actually taking care of the assets that we already have and keeping them in a good state of condition and repair. And that's the stewardship part of the CIP. Projects are organized into 3 tiers based on Do we have money secured, ranging all the way to no funding identified yet? So it's a 10-year horizon on this plan. So there's things out there that we don't quite know yet how we'd fund them, but we have some estimated costs for those projects. You'll notice in this plan that fleet comprises more than half of the overall plan value. 75% of the plan value is for fleet in the state of good repair as well, which makes sense since we're in the bus business. That's what we're buying most of. So after this, I go into a few project highlights, but I want to stop there and see if there's some questions so far.
Great. Checking in with the committee. Any questions for Joe? Or online too?
Nope.
Okay, seeing none. Go ahead, Joe.
All right, next slide, please. Speaking of fleet, just a highlight for fleet for this coming year. LTD's fleet replacement plan for next year includes receiving delivery of 10 new 40-foot Gillig diesel buses. The first 2 of which will be here in July. That's part of a 10-bus order that kind of spans these 2 fiscal years. And then another 8 buses coming in FY26. We expect those at the latter end of the year, probably Q3 and Q4. Next slide. You probably noticed this driving in this evening. The Operations Command Center project is going to expand the administrative building to include monitored operational dispatch space, operator report area, training classrooms, some restrooms and showers, and some other operator rest accommodations. This project involves remodeling about 9,000 square feet of the existing building, and then adding another 8,000 square feet to the footprint of the building. And then we have about 25,000 square feet of site improvements. These updates are going to improve safety and security, accessibility. It'll improve customer service, employee engagement, reduce training costs, streamline our everyday operations for the team, as well as improve employee development and training. So it's going to do it all. And just as a side, if the committee would like to, or members of the committee after the meeting, happy to take folks over for a tour of the active construction. The crew's gone away for the day, so it's safe to go over there and take a look if you want. The conditions are better than our last tour. Next slide, please. Oh, this is a good one. So LTD is replacing our aging. Yeah.
Sorry. A bit slow on the fleet. When you're talking about fleet, you're saying some buses are coming in this fiscal year or next fiscal year?
Yeah, the order was placed in this year, and so they're being built right now. We'll take delivery of the first 2 in July.
So when I look at the chart on page 11, CIP projects, I only see a number for fleet in fiscal year 29.
The order you're talking about, it's just the current order.
Yeah, it's just the current order. Yeah.
And then there's a big gap. You don't plan on purchasing any buses until, I don't know, beyond 2035?
Are you going to speak to the replacement plan?
Up in state of good repair
Okay.
is the fleet.
Yeah. So the buses are replaced based on age and condition, and so there's a subsegment of the fleet that's ordered every couple of years.
But I guess I'm not seeing that every couple of years number in this chart.
Joe, it's bus
It's-
purchase under the state of good.
State of good
repair
repair.
area.
That's
Yeah.
what they are.
Oh, I'm looking at the fleet number below.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Looking at this.
Fleet improvements.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah.
Thank you.
And just, Gino, for what that is, I wasn't tracking. I apologize. That is a particular project to actually improve the securement system on buses. So it's a new rear securement system for all the buses. So it's kind of a improvement project, I guess you could say.
Great, thank you.
So Joe, just to clarify what Gina was getting after, the cost of replacing buses is under, for more regular replacement is under state of good repair. And
It
then
is.
for special projects, it's under fleets.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification.
Could I ask,
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead, Gary.
maybe you could explain to me a little bit about the buses that you're acquiring? Because I know in the past, historically, we had talked about moving it towards electric. And in the information that I got, that I read at home, it talked about that wasn't necessarily working very well, and that the buses that are under order are diesel.
Yeah, they are. So right now we have 30 battery electric buses. The challenge with battery electric buses is range, and the range is dependent on conditions, weather conditions, load factors. In the summertime, you're running AC, the bus gets less mileage. In the wintertime, you're running heat, the bus gets less mileage. So it's the predictability and the variability is a lot with a percentage of that much in our fleet. So the diesel that we use in our diesel buses is what's called R99, which is a renewable diesel, 99% renewable. And Mr. Wildish, what we found is that the biggest thing we can do to track on the climate goals that the state has in front of it is to grow ridership, whether we use a renewable diesel bus, a regular diesel bus, or a battery electric bus. And the cost for battery electric buses versus the diesel buses they're much higher. And then we have to retool, and we have to put in the infrastructure. So we could have a yard full of all battery electric buses, but not be able to afford the folks to drive them and fix them. So for us to be able to scale the right way and to meet climate goals in the right way is for us to add more diesel to our current fleet and reduce that percentage of battery electric so we can maintain our reliability and meeting service every day.
Interesting. How many miles can you get in a charge on the electric?
So I'm going to defer to Mike Hirsch.
I love that question. Thank you very much. Mike Hirsch, Chief Operating Officer, and that's exactly the problem. On a good day, on a day like today, we make it in the neighborhood of 200 miles. Or today, to be 10 or 15 degrees hotter, that 200-mile range could drop in the neighborhood of 120, even 110 miles. The analogy I gave is imagine going on your family vacation, and tomorrow you can put gas in your car and go 200 miles. The very next day, you put the same gas in your car and you can only go 90 miles. And that's the operational challenge. The entire industry has woken up to the fact that we're just not quite there yet with the battery buses.
I remember going back to Atlanta for a big conference there, and they were exaggerating, obviously. Because we were
to the point that 2 of the 4 manufacturers went out of business.
Yeah, because we were talking, 250, 280, which seemed workable. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that. Stephen, go ahead. You had a question.
So it's from renewable sources, old fryer grease.
Linda, you look like, yes, go ahead, Linda.
I want to know what you're going to do with those 30 buses.
Oh, we've got some plans. Thank you for asking that. They're in demand in some parts of the country. There are some properties that have big special events coming. Think Olympics and soccer tournaments, right? So we're having some conversations on how we could perhaps do some trades or some other things. But we feel that reducing that would be helpful, and it would be helpful for us and for other agencies. As Mike mentioned, the number of bus manufacturers in the country has drastically decreased. So looking for alternative sources to acquire vehicles has become a hot market as far as buses go and hot markets go. Be clear.
Great. We got a great round of questions going, just checking around. Any other questions? All right, let's go ahead and continue. Joe, thank you.
All right, yeah, thank you. This is our mobile video system project. I don't know how far I got into this. I'll start over. We're replacing the aging and fragmented mobile video system here at LTD, which currently includes eight different types of recorders, and 70% of the system is running on end-of-life hardware. This new cloud-based solution will manage between 1 and 17 high-definition cameras on every bus, providing improved safety, constant video or consistent video quality, and management, remote access, numerous efficiency improvements for operations and fleet and IT work groups. Next slide, please. Video continued. So these infrastructure improvements are actually building on each other, which is a pretty neat thing. The recently completed fixed asset surveillance project, which we completed about 1.5 years ago, which is all the cameras at all of our stations. So facility-based, combined with this mobile video system, are all going to home run back to this new operations dispatch center that we have underway right now. And so the new connectedness to buses and public spaces is designed for effective and efficient dispatching of our public safety resources and coordination with our partner law enforcement agencies. Next slide. So in partnership with Cascadia Mobility and with funds awarded by ODOT's Innovative Mobility Program earlier this year, LTD is going to develop a plan for the next iteration of the regional bike share during this summer and fall. The initial high-level capital start costs for this project are anticipated to be $4 to $5 million. LTD has already secured about $1.8 million in the FY 26-27 lane stiff plan. Next slide. And then planning department's always doing a bunch of studies. Cyclical planning projects and one-time planning studies advise the strategic direction of this organization. These studies inform the ongoing work around community engagement, mobility management, efforts to improve travel time reliability, introduction to new technologies, and planning future bus routes and corridor plans. So a lot of good work in the planning division as well. That is my last project highlight. Happy to take any questions you have. So.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
Looking around, I'm going to put myself in the queue, but if there's someone else would like to ask a question, take a back seat. Yes, go ahead, Gary.
Yes. I wanted to maybe be sure I understand what we're talking about on the mobility integration motor modernization. On that bike share, who's running that? Who's in charge? I mean, what I'm saying, what agency? Because initially this was under the city of Eugene, right?
Yeah.
Does it remain under the city of Eugene?
It's currently contracted by the city of Eugene. And if you don't mind, I'll ask Dave Roth, our planning director, to come and give a little highlight as to where that may go.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that this is a headache you don't need.
Thanks for the comment. So Dave Roth, I'm the director of planning with LTD. And so the question was who owns the system right now. So currently it is the assets are owned by the city of Eugene, and the city of Eugene owns the contract with Cascadia Mobility, which is the operator of the system. Right now, we should note that LTD is in the process of taking over the contract, City of Springfield's contract with Cascadia Mobility. So we will be the contract holder with Cascadia for Springfield operations starting this spring over the next 2 years. And the bigger picture project that Joe has mentioned is LTD pulling in the bike share program within our suite of mobility, our portfolio of mobility services. And we should note that LTD has been a longtime supporter of the program financially, as well as administratively. We've sit with a group called the Shared Mobility Work Group, which consists of agency partners. U of O is a big supporter of bike share, City of Eugene, City of Springfield, Lane Council of Governments, so on and so forth. So it's a work in progress. As Joe mentioned, we'll be doing a planning effort in coordination with the partners and Cascadia Mobility, which will sort of lay out the big picture plans going forward.
Follow-up question. Looking at it from the plus and minus side, expense versus income. How does it balance? You know, is it no exposure, no cost, or is you know, you said 5 million or 500,000, whatever, but I'm just wondering, does the service cover the expense?
As with our other services, there is a subsidy involved. And the way that the system is set up right now, which will likely continue going forward, even with LTD sort of ownership of the contract, is it relies on financial support from all of the partners at the table. So University of Oregon Transportation Services, the ASUO at University of Oregon pays fees to support the system, City of Eugene, City of Springfield, and that's on top of fair revenue. So fair revenue itself doesn't cover the operational costs. So we rely on all of the partners providing funding, as well as the sponsorship through Peace Health organization as well. So it's a combination of funding. So LTD is not going to be on the hook for the operational costs alone. It will be a partnership.
Yeah, I just remember, Carl, if you remember a little thing about, you used to see LTD buses at the Oregon football games. It was supposedly a break-even situation. And we found out that we were only donating $200,000 a year to the athletic department. And we didn't think that was appropriate. So that's why you see school buses. Thank you.
Yep, I remember that, Gary. Charlie, actually, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask questions on with regard to bike share. So is it Dave or David?
Dave is fine.
Dave, hi, Dave. So when LTD does take control of the bike share program, is the idea to go ahead and unify like the fare portion of it so that your UMO app will work on everything?
I can't speak to the UMO app itself. However, that is the goal, and that's why we're calling this the integration project. So ultimately, the goal is to create a seamless experience so that the bike share bikes can really be a first last mile solution for, where our fixed route system ends, and making that connection to people's homes or the destinations they're trying to get to. So the idea here ultimately is to hopefully pay once and be able to take a bus trip and a bike trip combined without having a separate app for each service and that sort of thing. So that's the goal that we're heading towards.
That's great. That's the dream. Thank you very much for sharing that. Charlie, go ahead.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Along the same line, just curious on the cost per whatever the right metric is. I mean, because you said it's going to be subsidized. This is going to be a service that's going to be simply subsidized by taxpayers. What is the cost per user then? There's a small fee that doesn't cover it. What is the right amount of cost per with whatever those numbers might be? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Oh, absolutely. So the planning process that we'll go through will dive into the financials and will give us a better picture of the financials. But right now, the fee for use depends on the program you're involved with. So if you're just a member of the public using the service, you pay $1 fee to unlock the bike. And then I think it's 10 to 15 cents per minute to use the bike. They have programs available for different users. So for example, University of Oregon students have a significantly reduced rate because the University of Oregon as an entity pays into the program. So they're subsidized through the U of O. So we'll be looking at options to offset the subsidy of that through these partnerships and to get the best value for LTD as we can. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Charlie. Any more questions for Dave about bike share integration? Okay, then I've got a different question with regard to the video system replacement. First of all, I'm very much in support of these kinds of upgrades. I think it does a lot for safety for our ridership. I was wondering though, if with these upgrades, does that open any windows for Wi-Fi for the buses, or has that been investigated?
Great question for our performance officer.
Thanks. That has been explored. The option to open up Wi-Fi already exists technologically. As far as rolling that out as a program, that has been considered in the past. It's not being considered right now, but it certainly could be considered in the future.
Great, thank you. Other questions? All right. Oh yes, go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, unfortunately, somebody always comes up the question, but, on the Florence Mobility Hub. I'm not looking at the packet I got today, I'm looking at the packet I got last week. I assume that that's TIF funding. You know, and that funding is coming all out of that tax, okay. And I'm assuming Florence is still not a member or is not part of our district, right?
Our taxing district?
Our taxing district, yeah.
No, they are not.
Okay, that hasn't changed. I was thinking that someday that might be an idea so that we would, yeah, okay, thank you.
Just for the clarity of anyone who's in on this, could someone describe the Florence Mobility Hub?
Yeah, I can give a quick overview. Yeah, so there's a number of small services that serve the coastal area, as well as one that's links Eugene and Florence. And right now they're kind of all gathering together at a meeting spot outside a grocery store. So it's, I think we're going to help the city of Florence organize a potential spot where that could all happen in a more, I guess, higher user experience sort of way. The project that's in here now is just the planning process for that, and the site location process, and kind of scope out and program what those needs might be. I think there's about a half dozen different services that come in and through Florence right now. In fact, the planning team went on a retreat there just last week to go experience it for ourselves and see what the connectivity is like. And so there's a lot of opportunity there.
Thank you very much for that explanation.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, then I've got one more. Joe, were you wanting us to vote to approve the CIP this right now or later in the meeting?
I think the way the packet is set up is an action after each one of the items, but okay. I'll leave it to you guys.
So then we are at the point where I will entertain a motion regarding the CIP. And if you go to page 4, the packet.
I move to forward the community investment plan as presented to the board of directors with a recommendation for approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by, was that Pete? Did you say that? Okay, good. I thought I heard it. So second by Pete. Great. We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Let me make sure. Any final comments before, for or against before we move to a vote? Gary.
I would make one comment. Our rideshare. You know, I think LTD does a fantastic job with not rideshare, but the medical transit. RideSource, RideSource. And I see the impact of if you have a huge impact at Medicare politically, wow, what an impact that is. Because that's a big ticket item and it's so important to this community. You see those buses everywhere doing their job. That's a spooky part of this whole thing. So, but I just wanted to, as a concern. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. I want to check online to make sure. I think it's Jason and Darvin. Any comments for or against or comments in general?
Not for me.
Okay, and looking around the room, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to a vote. Gino, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Stephen Wheeler.
Yes.
Michelle Weber.
Yes.
Carl Ye, I vote yes. Heather Murphy.
Yes.
Charlie Conrad.
Yes.
Kelly Sutherland. Oh, right, not here. Darvin Fowler.
Yes.
Pete Knox.
Yes.
Gary Waldish.
Yes.
Lawrence Green.
Yes.
Jason Williams.
Yes.
And Linda Lynch. Great. I don't think I missed anyone. So it is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. Great. Then we'll go ahead and move on to the proposed 2026-2035 long-range financial plan.
Thank you. Perfect.
All right, so welcome, everybody. I'm Julie Lindsay. I am the CFO for LTD, and I'm here to present the long-range financial plan. So again, 2026 to 2035. This presentation is going to focus on the financial plan, which is for the general fund. So we'll talk about transfers to the other funds, but the main focus of this plan is our general fund. This long-range financial plan was presented at the last board meeting. And I just want to make a note that some of those estimates have been updated to align with the FY26 proposed budget. So I will review how our long-range financial plan fits with other planning tools and helps drive budget development, including reviewing our key inputs and trends impacting our financial. Additionally, known on the financial projections presented tonight. So, okay. So inputs. So when we are starting to look at this financial plan and updating it for the next year and then the 10th year out, we do look at several things. We look at our current year budget and our actuals. We take and compare what we budgeted for, which is like almost a year in advance, and we're looking at our year-to-date actuals. We do this analysis to identify some variances from the budget, and then what we'll do is use those variances to create estimates for our future, which may be off our current year-to-date actuals. We also use a previous year's actuals, so we've used 23 and 24 actuals, and then compared to the 25 budget and what we're seeing so far in 25. We look at some economics. We have several factors. So we do have the state transit tax, and you may hear that also as the payroll tax, but LTD also has the local payroll tax. So those are two based on payroll. One comes through the state and one is a local tax. We look at employment rate changes. We look at inflation rate, benefit costs, market rates, the possible tariffs has been high on our discussions, and then the changes of the availability in our grant funding. Okay, we also take into account our current and historical projections for staffing levels, and we look at what was budgeted for the FY25 staffing levels. As Pam had mentioned before, we spoke with our managers. We got an idea of what our staffing needs are, and those were built into the FY26 budget, as well as into this forecast. We have future years out from FY26. We did not build in additional staffing. So just to be aware, that's one of the pieces that the long-range financial plan does not have built in, but we did put a factor of 5.21% on personnel services as we move forward into the next 10 years. So we have the local tax revenue, so also known as a payroll tax, and we look at the forecast based on historical trends, economic upturns and downturns in our local economy. So we've had that tax had a tax increase from 2016 to 2025. So it's now maxed out at the 0.8%. So, but that rate increase year over year has really only made up a relatively small portion of the tax revenue. What we see is increases in wages, and we see increases in the total number of employees. So that has made up a majority of that local tax. So based on the February Oregon economic and revenue forecast, inflation has remained steady at 2.8%, unemployment slightly higher at 4.2%. But based on tax returns, there is a stronger than anticipated employment, which affects both the state payroll tax as well as our local payroll tax. The other thing we do look at when we're developing this long-range plan is we look at our service data and our operator staffing estimates. And we use that data to try to plan the FY26 budget and then use that to project out to the other years. We also look at other things. We look at our grants So we have several grants out there. Some names you may have heard is the ARPA and the CARES grants associated with the COVID area. We have our STIF grant funding coming from the state. We have the fleet plan. We have other plans that we use, the strategic plan that help build this long-range financial plan. We also look at transfers. So there are grant responsibilities where the general fund pays for the match, so it's 20%. So in this forecast, you will see a transfer section that shows what we're putting into our reserve funds. And we do, as Pam had already mentioned, we look at historical data. We will go back 20 years, and what we're looking for is trends, how our economy was, what we can learn from that in regards to our projections for future. I prefer a more conservative projection, so I think that you will see that represented this evening. And so in summary, when we are developing this, we're looking at basically over 30 different assumptions based on current economic conditions, but also historic. And what we're doing is looking to make sure that we are viable for the 10 years that this plan is covering. Okay, so to some of the details. Our assumptions when putting this plan together. So different than maybe some previous years, the general fund is making an assumption that there is some federal assistance from the federal formula funds that helps cover operations built into this general fund forecast. As well as we have increased the STIF funding coming from the state to cover the operational funds for the general fund, and this has to do with increasing service. So there's a $4 million addition on the general fund side that has to do with increasing service levels. This is in addition to the current 1.3 million STIF funding that covers the low income and student fares. We have the 5.21% from the 26 on through the life of the forecast. And we've got your materials and services inflated at about 3.8%, understanding that some of these costs for materials and services could be increasing above that based on some of these economic concerns that we have. Our capital transfer into the capital fund is based on the CIP. So we look at the CIP, the amount that is being charged to the general fund turns into the transfer from this fund. And we've got that out the 10 years. There are a couple considerations that could affect the forecast. Okay, so for sure, the changes at federal and state levels. So we're listening, we've got Sam that's watching, helping us understand what that means. We've got inflation above and beyond what we've already made the assumption about, technology costs, aging fleet and equipment, and the tariffs. We also have labor contracts for the next 10 years. So as we watch and we update this long-range plan year after year after year, these things are taken into consideration. All right, and I do apologize because as we get to this slide, the numbers get really, really small. So what we did is we did add some graphs that may give a visual. So we've got our proposed operating revenues. So our operating revenues comprise about 6% of total revenues. This includes the cash fares and passes, the group passes, advertising, we'll talk about that in just a minute, and then we've got some event services. So for the life of the fares and passes and the group passes, we have put a 3% increase, but we are basing it off the current FY25 estimate. So what we did is we looked at actuals to date, and it was noted that these fares and passes were actually below the FY25 budget. So our new estimate is based on what we're currently seeing as a trend, and then that moves forward for the 10 years. We have advertising revenue. So we've restored that beginning in FY27. So there is some plan and some management regarding the FY20 advertising on the buses. Let me do one more. Or do you want to?
We'll wait until you entertain
Okay.
questions. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay,
Sorry,
and
please
the-
proceed.
So we have event services. I believe this is the country fair. And so we just have a service increase of about 5%, and that is based on our current estimates and the cost increases for event services. Okay? All right.
Oh, is your question pertain to something that was just said?
Yeah.
Oh, let's go ahead.
Probably
Go
the
ahead then.
buses.
So you can go back for a
Mhm.
second, and I just want to see if I have my mind wrapped around it correctly. And so I'm looking at the chart that we were given in our packet from last week. And under the roll-up for the resources and requirements, listed under the FY 25-26 budget, 4.5 and change, 4.558. In the column immediately to the left that's listed under the 25-26 estimated, it's 4.417. So the way that I'm reading that is that you are anticipating revenues higher than estimated. The budget is higher than what the estimate is. And if I heard you correctly, that the current actuals are below what we currently budgeted. So you're taking budgeted, adding more. So you're anticipating more revenue than what LTD is receiving today. And the other reason why I'm asking about that is as I go down and look at the expenditure side, all the expenses are in the budget are less than what the estimate is. So it's more revenue, anticipating more revenue than what the estimate is, and anticipating lower expenditures. I just don't want there to be a gap if the revenues, to me, there's some disconnect. I'm not sure if I'm following the
Okay.
logic behind it.
So, okay, so let's do on the revenue side, the budget, the adopted budget is higher than what we're seeing coming in. So our estimate is less than what was budgeted in FY 25. And our projection going out the 10 years is based on current year-to-date estimated revenue, not the budget because we knew it was higher.
So the budget that we're about to approve, or that we're talking about, is the 25-26 budget, correct?
Yes.
So on this chart, the 25-26 budget, it is higher than the estimated, and the estimated is lower than the 24 budget. So again, if I'm reading those columns correctly, I'm not following the rationale behind why there's such a disconnect. I get the 3%, and I get adjusting for inflation, but just looking at these numbers on the page.
Okay, so the estimate is for current year.
So the column that says 25-26 estimated is really actuals to date for 24-25?
Yeah.
Estimated for the total year.
Yeah.
Okay.
For our current budget. Then the proposed 26 is based off of that estimate. Oh,
Would it be?
I apologize. So there is an error on the top of that column.
Okay.
The estimated column should read 24-25 estimated budget.
Okay.
That's that column.
Thank you.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, so that,
This one right here.
good catch, and we will update that.
Oh,
Thank you.
So, okay, so that makes sense, right? So we have year-to-date estimate for 25, which is our current year. Then because it is lower than the actual adopted budget, what we did is we used the estimate to do the 3%. Thank you. Yeah,
I'm gonna,
and we will get that updated.
Okay.
So basically much more conservative than what the 25 adopted budget was.
Julie, and then I'm gonna call on Gary and say, could you kind of summarize what the error is for everyone, just to make sure we're all on the same page?
Yes, so, and unfortunately,
Is there a way to
everything is so
blow-
small, I
Can we
can
blow
barely.
that, is there a way to blow that up just on that
Yeah,
one
the
section?
third column has an incorrect
Yeah.
title.
Okay,
The third column title should read FY 24-25 estimate.
Actual.
So what that means is current year to date, what's been happening, and then we annualized it. And so
Okay.
that's what we are estimating versus the budget.
so that blue shaded column should be actual. It's blue.
And it's still estimated because the fiscal
still
year
esti-
has not completed.
Oh, that's true. Okay. so
Yeah.
yes.
So it's still estimated,
But it's for that time period. It's for the current year time.
current year.
Okay.
Just looking at things, it appears that the packet is incorrect, but the slide is correct.
I think someone online was trying to speak.
Okay, so the packet, our prints,
Okay.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
We're seeing online looks right for that column.
Yeah.
Thank you. Then Gary.
Yes, just a simple question. On the fares, is this based on increasing fare, the price of the fare? Or is this on an increase in the volume of ridership? So, or both?
Yeah.
So, no, we're at this point for this projection, we're not planning on, we didn't put in an increase in fares. What is happening is we are putting fare validators on all of the buses now. So we wanted to see what impact that would be.
On the MX,
Mhm.
which, yeah.
Yeah, because we, as you know,
That makes sense.
we discontinued fares during COVID. So people kind of got used to just getting on and off. And so we have seen this trend in our fares. They were increasing, a little bit each year, and then they've kind of tapered off. So we thought, okay, what's going on? So we decided that before we looked at a fare increase, we should try to collect right from the riders we already have.
We couldn't convince ourselves 10 years ago to do that. Good view.
If I could add just a little bit to that, that's a very good question. The fare validators going on MX, as you know, 40% of our ridership is between the two stations. And the validators aren't the magic. They're the tool to help us get there. We have a new strategy on our public safety, how we deploy to make sure that we're capturing, increasing that fare recovery rate and improving on that. So I think that's important to note as well.
Good. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think please continue.
Okay. So non-operating revenues. A quick look at the difference of the titles. They should be correct on this one. So non-operating revenues make up the other 94% of the total revenues. So this is the local payroll tax, which is 82% of the total non-operating revenues. Current year, we're seeing actual local payroll taxes, which when you're looking at the chart includes the payroll taxes, self-employment taxes, and state in lieu of taxes. It is actually trending above what was budgeted for FY25. So we would be using again the estimate to project that out for the 10 years. For FY26, so based on the budget, the proposed budget is going to show a 6% increase in this particular tax, and then we've put it out a more conservative 5% for the next 10 years. In the current long-range financial plan, the FY25 federal formula assistance is budgeted at $2.2 million for operations. And for FY26, that has been increased to 4.7, 4.9 in FY27, and then increasing to a 5.05 million for the remaining years. So our formula funds, based on the need with the CIP, what we looked at is we can use 50% for the operating expenses. On the state assistance side, so again, the STIF was increased by 4 million due to being able to cover with the STIF funds the increase in service, which is an addition to our current 1.3 million that has been budgeted previously for this STIF. All right, so here's a chart, and this chart is putting all of our revenues together. Okay, and I do want to draw your attention to FY25. So LTD did draw down the remaining of the CARES and ARPA funds. So those were funds from the COVID area. They covered operations. They have been drawn down. And so there is an increase in the FY25. We're going to have to realize those revenues in that year. Okay, so outside of that, what you will see, that's why it drops again in 26. That is one-time drawdown funds. And then in 26, it drops down. And then it conservatively increases for the next 10 years. Okay, so how are we going to spend the funds? So we've got some proposed operating requirements. So this is where your personnel services, which is wage increases based on CPI, based on merit increases, collective bargaining agreements. Our personnel services includes our health insurance, which has a cost max of 7% a year, our defined contribution plan adjustment. So one of the presentations at board last time had talked about the one defined contribution retirement account being adjusted based on market. There was an increase based on FY24 current estimate. So this again is where we looked at budget and compared it to the estimate, and the estimate was what we used to move personnel services forward through the 10 years. On your materials and services, we have a projected 3.8. So again, understanding that economic changes can make a difference in that, but we did a 3.8% across the 10 years. Insurance and risk is projected at 3%. Okay, so one note, LTD did adjust the materials and services as well as the insurance projections in the proposed FY26 budget. You'll see slightly in additional increase 4.5% in those in the FY26 budget, and then out from there is 3%. Okay, and then this gives you this is a graph that gives you a visual. It illustrates, again, a conservative increase in total requirements. We've got your personnel, material services, and insurance in this particular graph. You can see that 26 personnel, and this is again our projection, does not vary a whole lot from our 25 estimate. And that is mainly because our 25 estimate is a little bit high, just based on some unknown factors that we were looking at when we put this long-range financial plan together. So we're very close to the 26, and then we move from there. So when we did our FY26 budget, we did a lot more detailed analysis, and we feel really confident that the 26 number is based on our assumptions, and we have a little room in 25. Okay, so next. Okay, so the other piece of the requirements is our transfers. So this is where, whoops, one too many. This is where we are actually transferring general funds to the different reserve funds in order to meet our requirements. So we have our mobility services fund. So we have an amount in there, but our transfer this year is dropping because mobility services has increased coverage with their STIF funding. We've got Medicare transfer. So realizing the Medicare program, it is still requiring a small reserve to make sure that based on revenues, we have a reserve to be able to meet the costs of that program. We've got point to point. So from this is right before I got here, but the fund was part of a grant that is almost completed. We are continuing the van pool service. So we have reduced the transfer going into that fund based on the current needs of the match and administrative support. Our sustainable services fund, so we do transfer about $300,000 a year for each of the years of the forecast. So this is our fund that is beyond our working capital. And in a minute, you'll see those two funds put together. But this goes back to covering our reserves. Working capital covers 2 months. We've got about several months in this one, but as we get to the end of the life of this particular long-range financial plan, we get down to about the 2.2 months. And then again, we've got our capital projects transfer. So based on the community investment plan, this is the match from the general fund for the projects that are on that plan. This chart, let's see, next one. Oh, no, we're not working. Okay, so this one. So this chart here gives you an idea of where we are, totals, and gets us to 2035. So we have a working capital, and again, I apologize for the small, but it gives you totals and then our working capital fund. So this is our general fund. at the end of FY '25, we are estimating of having about 32 million in there. So please remember, this includes that ARPA and CARES drawdown. We did those one-time funds. The line that says unappropriated ending balance, that is our 2 months that is required. And so the bottom line of the chart is what we have. The goal is to get to 2035 with a positive number on this working capital chart. Based on our assumptions, we show that we have a positive balance all the way across when we get to 2035, okay? So our unrestricted working capital will be used to balance the operating fund. Annually, we may have some negatives and then we have positives. We use this working capital to fill in those. For the life of the forecast, this working capital fund stays above that 2 months requirement. Okay. Okay, so this is a diagram that shows between 2026 and 2035, how the changes in working capital is being used to balance the budget, and we get down to just slightly that 2 month requirement. Okay. So the Sustainable Service Fund is above and beyond that working capital fund. So again, what we have in there is we have the same, very similar chart where we are putting funds in. We're putting about 300,000 in each year, okay? And this fund provides about 2.2 months of reserve in that 2035 year. So total, when you're looking at these two funds together, we show that we're going to have about 4.2 months. Let's see, which one are you on? Okay, here's the changes. The changes in the Sustainable Service Reserve really doesn't move much because we're using that working capital first. Okay, then we do have some changes because one of the pieces of this one is part of the ARPA funds that we drew down that one time, that is being used in some of the out years. Okay, and so it shows a small change in the Sustainable Service Fund. And if you turn and we look at the chart, what you have here is it shows that we will still have 4.2 months of reserve. So when we get into 2035, depending on how close these assumptions become reality, we will still have about 6.2 months of reserve between these two funds, outside of our capital fund and outside of those other smaller funds that we have. And that actually concludes that review. So questions, I'll turn the floor back over.
Julie, thank you so much for that presentation. And yeah, I'm going to take questions and we'll start with Stephen.
So, really high level question. I'm looking at all these charts. They're well done. Is it required that you have a 10-year forward outlook under Oregon law? And if it is, I get it. If it isn't, is 10 years the right outlook to take instead of 5, 12, or whatever?
Let me take that one. Yeah. So Oregon doesn't require that. You're correct. It's actually the FTA. So the FTA does expect us to do this. In fact, we're working with LCOG right now, and they're fulfilling a requirement where they have to do a 20-year outlook that's focused on transportation in this area. So with the FTA, this is something that the FTA looks at, and they want us to be planning our capital expenditures, but also our operating expenditures out. Yes, but I understand where you're coming from because, you know, when you start going that far out, you're making a lot of assumptions. Right, yeah, but it does, what it provided for us this year, because if you've been following the news, there's a lot of transit agencies that are talking about their fiscal cliff, and we were very curious to see, okay, how, because the plan was to use that COVID era money and actually stretch it out over a number of years. Yeah, but we didn't have it in our bank accounts. So we were strongly advised earlier this year it was obligated to us. We just hadn't drawn it down yet, to go ahead and draw it down. And then that allowed us to actually do a cash basis projection to see, okay, where will we be in 10 years? So for actually day-to-day, for our operating purposes, we really 2 years.
Can I add? Yeah. The other thing, though, that we can use this for is Pam and I can go back to long-range financial plans previous, and we can look at our projections out those years, and now we can compare it because those years are happening now, and make some adjustments if needed to our assumptions.
Great, thanks. So I guess the answer is it is useful. We're not just spinning our wheels for no reason. Any other questions? Yes, Heather.
We did. Drawdowns were required, I think, by June 30. And yeah, and basically it's reimbursement. So we have spent the money in those years, and we actually went back and we pulled all the reports for reimbursement. Yeah.
We just didn't. Last year, we were in the fortunate position to end up with a surplus. We had planned to pull some of the COVID era money down last year, but when we got to June, it was like, okay, we really don't need it, and so we chose not to do that. So a lot of the majority of the money that we drew down was for fiscal year 24, reimbursing us for those operational costs. Yeah.
Checking for any other questions. I'm going to put myself in the queue. All right. My first question is, what is the funded ratio for our pension plan? And more importantly, when should I stop caring about that?
Yeah, I mean, that one. And so our currently, as of beginning of the year, so I'm not sure where I could today might be a little bit different. Plan the need the mid-80s, so they were not and they were in pretty good shape. But part of the reason that we want to take some of the COVID era money that this year we want to pay down any future liability or some of the future liability. We won't be able to pay it all, but we do want to get that salary plan percentage increased up into the mid-80s as well. So that's one of the things that we're looking at for the uses of that extra money.
Well, that's great. Thank you. That answers my question. Those are good numbers. So it sounds like it's on a good track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate to call it extra money.
Yeah.
Because it really belongs to us.
Right.
So,
Gary, do you have a question?
Sorry.
Yeah. I sit here and I look at the non-operating revenues and I see interest. Not too many years ago, we didn't have a line item for interest.
Yeah.
But you have now, and I'm sitting there looking at that, your unrestricted cash, and that helps answer that question. But it also raises a question, because as they move across, the interest amount that you were showing stays pretty high. And you're not gonna have the working capital. The unrestricted.
Yes. Yeah, that's because the majority of the funds, what you're looking at there is just the reserve in the 2 months working capital for the general fund. The majority of the reserves that we have are all restricted funds. So a portion of it is STIF, And a portion of it is money that we've transferred to the capital fund that's being held and waiting for projects to complete. So all of that money is invested.
So but that amount, because that's a sizable amount.
Right.
To generate 3 million in interest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we do recognize all of that in the general fund.
Thank you.
Yeah, plus it didn't hurt that the interest rates have been a little higher. So.
Checking online, any questions? Looking around the room? If there are no more questions, I will entertain a motion, and then if you look at page 18, that's a possible motion.
I move proposed 2035 long-range financial plan as presented for the Board of Directors with a recommendation for approval.
Is there a second? Second by Gary Wildish. Great. I'm going to try something different. Let's just say, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Yes, please say nay. Okay, the ayes have it. Passed unanimously.
I would like to say nicely done. Yeah, it was interesting reading, and it brought me back to when I used to be on the board, but good answers. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So next we have the proposed 2025-2026 budget.
Yeah. Well, Jameson has a few words to start out and parse out.
Just a few remarks before Pam and the team jump in. Each year as part of the budget process, rather than just present you all a bunch of numbers, we want to color it in and inform on what these numbers represent. We do a SWOT analysis by department, and then we come in, we present budget, and we present proposed work plans. So I'm going to share with you the rolled up SWOT for the organization. And then the chiefs sitting along with Pam and Julie are going to speak briefly about what their budgets are solving for this year. So I just want to share that with you. So when we look at our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, we go through a process that are recognizing that some of these are internal factors, some of these are external factors. Our strengths and weaknesses are what we can do, what we're in control of. Some of the external pieces are opportunities, and threats are mainly the environment. So some of the strengths that we recognize are our people. We know each we're blessed with a very good and engaged board and board committees. We have good community relationships and partnerships in the community, including labor, also including LCOG, who works hard in the rural areas, the cities and the business communities. We're starting to grow those relationships as well. We have good relationships at the state and at the federal levels, both within FTA, both at the regional up in Seattle and in DC, but also in Salem. We're in those conversations as well. A lot of industry knowledge in some really key areas. Our external communications approach has changed and shifted, so we feel that's a strength. And then, of course, our financial condition, as you just saw, and you'll see through this next presentation as well. Some of the areas that we're working on this budget that we feel we can get stronger are recruitment, retention, and training opportunities. I mentioned that people are our #1 asset. We want to make sure we continue to attract and keep our good people. We have talk through what's happening over in the administrative office, but we're looking at organization. So things along those lines on how it can be a little bit efficient. We're optimizing our communications assessment framework. You'll remember there was a dust up along River Road connected to one of our projects. We went through a public process to develop a framework. Our marketing team is working to operationalize our commitment to the community on how we move forward and making sure we don't fully bake plans and projects before we take them to the community. Succession planning is important. It's one of the board goals that I have. So we're looking at succession planning to make sure we have a strong organization as we move forward. We want to make sure we have a stronger reflection of our organizational core goals. We're going to be working on driving those throughout the organization. through training, through some executive coaching, but also training at all levels of the organization. We feel that's important. We had a triennial review this year. We had a drug and alcohol audit last year by FTA, Federal Transit Administration. And we have some work to do there in terms of compliance with some of our contractors, some of our processes and procedures relating to how we handle some capital projects and how we work along with FTA. So you'll see that we are shoring up some areas in the compliance area. And then finally, time to market. You know, it takes us a long time, us meaning government transit agencies, a long time to get to market. We want to figure out how we can use the data that we're collecting. We have a good investment in data, how we're using that data to create information to reduce time to market. So there's some areas that we're working on as an organization. Some opportunities that we see are continuing to develop collaborative opportunities for apprenticeship training, you know, continue to grow the workforce and continue to train the workforce, but leveraging different opportunities, LCC being one of them and others. We want to continue to vary how we recruit, our recruitment strategies and partnerships, implementation of retention strategies using key partners, leverage emerging technological advances that exist today, whether it's our ERP system or our enterprise asset management system, which will help us in fleet. We want to utilize you and policymakers and the public to continue to communicate LTD's value proposition. Mr. Wildish, you talked a bit about the LTD taxing area, and we talked about fares a bit. We have not had conversations. We've had conversations around fare policy. We have not had conversations around increasing taxes. I think we have a tax-free republic, but we want to show the value before we even have those conversations. I think that's critical. Tied to money, we want to identify non-traditional funding sources. We heard STIF and we have heard federal, but if we have a value proposition, what does that mean for other opportunities for funding sources? And then finally, engage our community on key projects to tighten our mission clarity. So folks know our mission is connecting community, but which community, what community, what do we do there? So I think there's an opportunity there to build on what we need to do. And we'll get some of that through our long-range mobility plan. And then finally, what we're watching out for is, you know, we've heard this funding uncertainty at the federal level and the state level, quite frankly, evolving expectations at the federal level. We need to understand, Sam mentioned, we had very good visits in Washington. In fact, some of the folks from DOT we met with just sent an email out today to have a check-in with various transit agencies. So we'll be getting an understanding of what the expectations are. We feel that there's a general distrust in government institutions, and we have a tax-free republic. And, you know, we have to be mindful of that we want to continue to build the trust of the public. And I know that there's challenges even at the state level with the transportation tax package, which are kind of shadowing over onto public transportation. But we want to be clear that that's something we're keeping our eye on. That said, lack of clear direction at the state level with the transportation package, it's still in the wind a bit. So we're engaging in those communications, but we want to make sure that we're understanding. And you know, as we just saw in our long-range financial plan, we're in good shape, but some of the services in the rural communities are not. And I think that if you look at the United Way's ALICE report, and I reference that all the time, so if you heard me, you can stop me now, but some of our communities are above 70% where ends just don't meet. And I think it's critical that we keep an eye, keep interjecting that conversation into the transportation package discussion. National economic conditions, you've heard Julie and Pam talk about tariffs and bus manufacturing, inflationary concerns, so we're tracking that as well. Cybersecurity threats and investment in protecting our infrastructure, those continue to increase. Hosted service costs continue to increase. So those are key things we're looking at. And finally, the general societal changes within our community. Our community has changed. Our bus operators, our frontline employees need support in different ways. Our customers need support in different ways. We see it in data and percent. You just saw a CIP presentation that included video surveillance system, and it's important that all of those things are linked. Quite often you'll see police here, and they're not here because we've done bad things. They're here to look at video because we have 113 roaming video systems throughout the city and throughout the region. It's going to be on our buses that go in the rural areas as well. So those are some of the things that this budget for this coming year represent that we have on our minds. And then with that said, I'll turn it over to Pam to walk through what the other areas are thinking.
Personnel overview, and then I'll go through each of the funds. Julie did a wonderful job with a lot of the detail about how we developed the budget and the long-range financial plan. So tonight's review of the budget will be a pretty high-level review, but I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have on the details. So first of all, we're going to start with some presentations by our department chiefs, and I'll start, I don't know, Jameis, if you want to start. Wendy Frisbee, our Chief Administrative Officer, is not able to be here tonight, and so Jameson's going to give her report.
Yeah, Wendy regrets she's under the weather, and she wouldn't have missed this, but we told her to get strong. She'll make up for it next year. So in terms of Wendy's areas, the administrative office includes human resources, marketing, compliance, and risk. And in human resources, there's a big change that's happening there. We are bringing in a company called Xenium. We're going to partner with Xenium to support and redesign our HR function. As I said earlier, our employees need another level of care and feeding. Xenium gives us access to more people that understand HR on a deep level. I believe we'll have someone on site, but we'll have access to 80 people behind them to answer questions around benefits and support our employees. This is going to help us to rebuild some areas that we need to rebuild in terms of modernizing some processes and make sure that we have consistency. So we look forward to that. We have committed to come back to our board periodically to establish what success looks like and to track those measures. In terms of health insurance, I think you heard already, we budgeted a 7% increase. That's by contract by our CBA. So we expect that will be under 7%. In terms of marketing, they're going to relaunch the bus advertising. And I'm looking at Eric right now, and he's nodding his head and smiling. So yes, that's going to happen. But we're in the process right now of putting together some contracts to realize that revenue in the oncoming fiscal year. And then we're looking at bringing more work in-house in that area as well. We have some really good graphic designers, really good quality. We have to free some time on them to get them to focus on higher level development, so creation. So we're going to bring more work in-house and reduce some reliance on consultants, and that's reflected in the adding of one position in marketing, which we feel will cover itself in those expenditure savings. And then finally, in the compliance and risk area, the on data now. Been availability of people who understand this kind of work inside and out with reductions in workforce at the federal level. So there's quite a pool of folks who understand what FTA is looking for. So we'll be looking at that. And of course, drug and alcohol. We're looking to get a more consistent approach to how we interpret the CBA across the organization as well. So labor relations is important as well. And again, risk management, largest cost increase are due to workman's comp, fleet auto insurance, and a rise in paid leave Oregon insurance. So that's a real cost to us that we're tracking as well. And so in compliance, we're looking at two roles: one to look at labor management, but then the other one to look at our policies and procedures that keep us in federal compliance. So I'll stop there.
Great. Thank you. Joe, you're next.
You're next. All right. So the Development Services Department is comprised of the planning and the facility work groups. These This department works to improve safety, maintain infrastructure in state of good repair, improve customer service experience, explore and invest in new mobility options, and increase service reliability. It's kind of broadly what those two work groups do. Over in the planning area, some cost drivers for FY26 include filling a vacant planning position, which will add capacity to execute on a new trip planner, the work on the coordinated human services plan update, and support that Florence mobility hub we were talking about earlier. Also, some training in service design software to help improve the bid work that will help, we think, retain some of that workforce, and so creating better work scenarios for bus operators, and increasing coordination with our partner jurisdictions to improve public project outcomes that can accommodate transit out in the public rights of way. That's both the city of Eugene and city of Springfield in particular that we're working closely with. Over on the facility side, cost drivers, some that you may probably utility rate across the so electric, gas, water, etc. Up to 8% is what we're going to be seeing for this next year. Also, contract service increases for the things that we don't do in-house, so things like janitorial, landscape care, specialty services like HVAC and pest control. Those costs are going up. Most of them are based on the contracts that we have with them. We are adding one additional maintenance position, which adds capacity to the work group to keep up with the aging assets and deferred maintenance. We also are initiating a special contract for deep cleaning all the bus stops. So we have about 1,100 bus stops over the 500 square mile district, and we're going to make a concerted effort this year to improve the appearance and sign legibility in particular at those stops. We're also in facilities managing an initiative to assess the accessibility and the physical condition of bus stops. This is some upfront work to support transitioning those assets that aren't quite meeting the ADA requirements and our state of good repair requirements. So it's just a big assessment of all of our fixed assets in that manner. We're also asking for one additional project manager that'll add organizational capacity to execute on district-wide projects, some of which have been mentioned here this evening. And we're also managing some vacant properties, which the board has heard some about this year, with the intent to right-size the things going on in that shop. And I'm not sure who I'm turning it over to. Hi, Julie.
Yeah, Julie's. Yeah.
What happened to me, Mr. Herfel?
I have two questions, one from Linda and then next from Gino.
So I just noticed in an out year, there's a sale of assets. Is that in your area?
It is.
Or is it those 30 buses?
Yes, I think is it the $1 million?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is first installment on the sale of our Hunsaker property.
We sold it to?
The YMCA.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Gino.
So you're adding two positions. I understand one's for facilities.
Mm-hmm.
And talk a little more about the second position in planning, did you say?
So
project manager.
A project manager, yeah. So this would be a project manager that would work on, again, kind of cross-functional projects. Depending on what we need that particular year, it could be an IT-focused position, or it could be a construction-focused, depending on what's happening that particular year.
So what's driving the need for that one? I can see the facilities one clearly, but I'm having trouble seeing the need for the other one. What's changed that requires the additional position?
The additional project manager position?
Yes.
Yeah. So going back to the CIP and the organizational capacity to execute on those projects, that's primarily what's going on there.
Okay.
So if you look at the CIP and what the organization would like to do in the first 3-4 years of that plan, it requires some additional workforce.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, please continue.
Thank you, Joe. All right, so as CFO, I have the finance team. I manage the procurement team and the materials management team. So for FY '26, and in response to our growing need of trying to increase our grants, increase the management of our grants, our grant team is looking at adding 1 FTE. That FTE is about 80% grant funded. So, so our idea is we're going to start creating indirect rates, some of these things to where we can recover some of our administration on the grants. And this analyst will be part of that team. We are also focusing on looking at some of our other positions that were currently open, and we're getting those filled, and then adding this grant analyst to the finance team. On our procurement team, we have 1 FTE that focused on contracts. It's a paralegal that was transferred over to compliance. So the procurement team went from 4 to 3. That team, though, also has contractual services with a contractor to help with some of the RFPs. And we're actually currently in the process of looking at that to see how that, if that's still needed, and what we're going to do with our FTE with procurement. Then on the materials management side, the budget that is going to be presented was adjusted for increases to the bus parts. So we looked at that, and we also wanted to ensure that our fuel budget remained at the 24-25 levels. This team is also looking in partnership with IT, which you'll hear about in a minute, looking to add an additional FTE, which will do some focus on the maintenance and part management technology. It happens to be a separate system. One of the pieces that we have an interest in is that system being able to load information into the finance system. So that FTE will be talked about here in a few minutes. All 3 of my teams are working on some succession planning as we move forward and doing some training, specifically leadership training, making sure we are clear on updated federal regulations, FTA regulations, as well as our technology. So we are in about the second and a half year of implementing an ERP system, which is the new finance system. We've got a goal. We've got about 10 modules that we are working really hard to get implemented to get us starting off FY '26 in a good spot. So with that, I will turn it over to our COO, Mike Hirsch.
Yeah, sure. I thought Charlie actually. We'll do Charlie, then Gino.
Question.
Thanks. Just a real quick question. What have you been putting down as your indirect rate on your grants? If you're going to increase them, what were they, and then what are you going to ask for?
We currently do not have an indirect rate that are on the grants. That's why that is part of our FY '26 work plan.
What do you plan on putting on there?
We have to calculate it, so I can't give you an amount. We will actually take an indirect rate calculation, look towards FTA or GAS, or sorry, where else will we get it from? The city has one that I have experience with, and so we will create that indirect rate.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Then Gino, then Heather.
Sure. No, I don't have any issues with the grant analyst being added. But when I look on page 38 or 48 of the material that went out, it doesn't show up in the chart. It shows you have 1 grant analyst now, and then 1 for 25-26. You can look at that later and figure out if you need to change anything.
Yeah, the increase in finance, that's going to be a grant analyst.
The one above it?
Oh,
Yes.
that's just on.
And the subtraction is the move of the FTE from procurement.
Got it. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you.
Were we looking at the packet or was it the binder?
It's,
I was going back to the packet on that
The
question.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Great.
We recently separated finance and grants.
Go ahead, Heather.
Mine was a follow-up question to Charlie's question. So trying to understand, I'm used to grants that give you the amount of indirect. And are we saying we've not ever taken that, or this is different that we're talking about? When you say we're going to set one, usually they're capped at 15%, or whatever.
Yeah, to my knowledge, the philosophy here has been that we spend 100% of the available grant money on projects. And I have not, other than direct costs, so we do have people like a project manager that's written into the grant. And we do charge that payroll to that. But other than that, we don't grants for all of our other overhead, IT or bookkeeping or anything. But we'll be looking at that, yeah.
Yeah, that is one of our work plans for this first year. Yeah.
Okay, back to you, Julie.
Oh, up to me now. Mike Hirsch, Chief Operating Officer, finishing my 3rd month, so be gentle, please. I'm here to provide some high-level points on the operations portion of the proposed budget. The budget before you reflects continued strengthening in our focus of service reliability, safety, and being responsive to our customers' feedback. District-wide for the entire LTD, we're proposing 15 and a half new positions. 7.5 of those are in operations, and I'll walk you through that. That includes operations, including fleet maintenance, as well as mobility services. The positions are key to maximizing the soon-to-open Operations Command Center. It may surprise you that at peak, we can have 70, 75 buses on service, and we have one person manning the helm in the Operations Control Center. We need to fix that, and we've asked for 3 additional OCC supervisors, transit supervisors. That will 3 will allow us to have 2 people in there most all hours of service. So of the 7.5, 3 of them are supervisors. To ensure fleet availability is able to support this, we've also requested 1 paint and body technician, a maintenance analyst, and 1 additional general service worker. Preventative workers. In addition to the new positions we're asking in this budget, the current active year budget has an operational hiring goal, including 16 additional bus operators, 9 more public safety officers, and 5 journeyman mechanics, with which we're in various stages of recruiting right now. So again, this current year and proposed budget before you has a strong emphasis on safety, service reliability. The comments I made about OCC will allow us to be better responsive to incidents, detours, to police, fire, EMS, leveraging the CCTV system that you heard about earlier tonight. The operating and fleet budgets include minor increases for such things as uniform cleaning, bus maintenance, diagnostic tools, training and inflation-driven increases in towing service, bus towing services. Turning to the Mobility Services Department, whose responsibility is to oversee a multitude of services, including ADA, paratransit, rural, and non-fixed route operations for the district. Key in the budget proposal, we're beginning a new STIF, State Transportation Improvement Fund, avoiding acronyms, biennium. We're beginning a new STIF biennium, which brings us several new grant-funded projects falling under mobility services. A few examples, and you've heard about many of them already, but rural shuttle service in South Lane, Mohawk Valley and Highway 36, expanded mobility on demand in Cottage Grove, community outcome initiative projects. It's a fairly long list. We can't stress enough the importance of the STIF Transportation Fund. As an example, this year, due to increased STIF funding, we saw a 103% increase in ridership in the Rhody Express in Florence. And we hope with the budget proposal we have in front of you, we'll see similar success around Lane County. The budget proposal has a program manager position, 2 mobility services to oversee, support increasing number of programs funded through the state funding. This position, if approved, will be largely grant funded. And turning to ADA Ride Source, ADA paratransit budget actually decreases 15%. We've reduced the budget amount to align more closely with our actual experience as post-pandemic ridership has stabilized. And this is the halftime position, which will be a Medicaid specialist to make sure we have the expertise to capitalize on what's happening in Medicaid. For the packet, pages 18 and 19, packet pages 45 and 46 are budget pages 18 and 19. We have line item details on the diverse services under mobility services. Really appreciate and thank you for your time. We have a full team here to answer any questions that may come up this evening.
Yes, Mike. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mike and Charlie.
Thank you for that. Really great grants. you have a grant position, and is it gonna be covered by the indirect rate, which has not been set yet, monies have not been received for, and the grants have not been applied, or is it going to be one of those positions that's gonna be directly budgeted in any grants that are received?
In the particular grant.
Yeah, this is focused on STIF, actually. So we increased the amount of administrative money we set aside out of our STIF budget for the next biennium. And part of that is because we're taking on a portion of that work that LCOG has been doing for us, and we're bringing that all back in-house. But this particular position will be focused on those programs and that are funded by STIF.
As a direct cost.
Yeah, and it'll be paid as a direct cost out of that program. Yeah.
And no need to apologize. We appreciate the questions and the external eyeballs looking at all of this.
Thanks. Gino and then Gary.
You mentioned the number of changes in fleet in terms of personnel. Is there a cause or causes what's the driver there?
In general, there is a plan to increase the fleet. We've talked about the 8 diesel buses that are coming. The battery electric buses have been, pardon the pun, a drain on maintenance resources. A lot of the towing range we crew training overall fleet.
Gary? Yes, on page 45 of the budget, you show a number of activities that we've never done before. And I assume that that's all STIP funded project. There's $3.4 million worth of projects there at the bottom. And it's very significant. The question I have is, okay, is this a one-time thing, or is this something that you would anticipate going on down the road?
So are you looking specifically at pilots, expansions?
Yes, the pilot expansion administration, right?
I'd say yes to all of the above. Some of them, for example, the bike share is in an early study of what would bike share, the questions you asked tonight, what would bike share look like? The Rhody Express expansion, we certainly wish to continue. Yeah. I tried to stress the importance of this state transportation improvement funding. If it goes away, many of these projects would be in jeopardy.
Okay, thank you. Great. Any other questions for Mike? And online people, I can't see you, so you should say something if you have a question.
No, I don't have.
Hearing none. Amy, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Yee, and hello, committee. I'm Amy Reichert, Chief Performance Officer for LTD. I oversee our information technology, intelligent transportation systems, and business intelligence. And I think it's important to emphasize, I came into this role about a year ago, and what we've really been focused on over the last year is defining a technology program. So we have these areas that contribute to the overall technology future of the district. So our information technology team includes our infrastructure, security, and data professionals. So think fiber, virtual machines, firewalls, applications, and so on. Our intelligent transportation systems focuses on transit-specific technology. So it's on the bus or it's peripheral to the bus. So this is things like mobile video, which has been mentioned a number of times, dispatching, automatic passenger count. So next time you're on the bus, look around, you'll see that it is a mobile computer at this point. There's a black box at the front that's full of cradle points and routers and all kinds of things that make it connected. And then we have our business intelligence group, which is a new group in the last year, which is they're focused on creating value from our huge data inventory. So it's taking all that information and actually turning that asset into reports and insights that we can use for meaningful decision making. So those are the groups. And in terms of the investments, you know, if you think about the community investment plan we looked at earlier, you would be hard pressed to go through any not identify. So we are involved in everything. Some of the really big things of note that you might not think about, bus commissioning. So we've got 2 new buses coming. That's a huge lift for our intelligent transportation systems team. They're on there commissioning all of the technology that makes the bus operate. We have our fare system modernization that's been mentioned. So all of those validators being installed, that's being overseen by our intelligent transportation team. We have our regional mobility enabling technology. So partnering with vendors to create the one app. How do we do that? How does that fit in with our infrastructure? Our operation scheduling upgrades to help improve our scheduling processes in operations, mobile video surveillance. I think that's been said 7 times now, so hopefully everybody remembers that one. It's a big project for us, over 2,000 cameras across all of our services and our non-service fleet. So a lot there. And then that will last into the future. So all of that is driving some changes in our materials and services costs. IT owns a large share of the increases in materials is network costs for districts. Even if it's not an IT application, it lives in the IT because of Mr. So that we're looking at materials and services. We're also anticipating the possible tariff impacts, especially in our hardware purchasing. A lot of what we do is chip as a service or a hot item. So right now everything's okay, but we need to keep an eye on that. We are working actively to mitigate some of these costs. So we know they're coming. Technology is going to continue to increase, but what we're keeping our eye on in our technology program is consolidating redundant technologies. So minimizing sprawl, which can happen in an organization. A lot of applications come on board. You're not managing them or using them, but they continue to get paid for over time. So we're looking to identify those and eliminate them or reduce them. And then providing strong governance for the introduction of new technologies, which is something that we have an opportunity to improve on and that we've started to do more of. And then personnel has been mentioned, of course. You know, when you add things to a system, you increase your production value, but you also increase your long-term support and maintenance needs. So just like with our buses, the more fleet we have, the more mechanics we need. So it's the same with our technology. It's just not as visible, right? It's behind the scenes, but you still need those technicians to be managing that infrastructure. And so we do have some ads here for additional technicians. And then, as Julie mentioned, we have a coordinator role that can help us start wrangling some of the processes within our critical applications, like the enterprise asset management and our CAD AVL, which is our dispatching and automatic vehicle location solution. So those are some of the key personnel ads, and that's really what's driving our costs. So welcome any questions.
Questions? Yes, Charlie.
Getting to the 2,000 cameras, what is the timeframe that that's going to be rolled out? And looking at it still, and I'm losing it on some of the charts rolling over, is it all housed in the 25-26 budget, or is it anticipated? Yeah, it's not going to happen. That's 3 cameras a day. That's going to have to be installed. I'm doing math roughly, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be here.
The majority of the cost there is actually going to be the licensing cost, which is going to be incurred in the first year, so the fiscal year, this proposed budget. But we do have, I think, in the community investment plan, we've mapped out, I think, 2 to 3 years of costs that we expect. And that's based on the initial upfront cost of the installation. And then our grant actually allows us to pay for the second year of licensing. So you'll see that reflected there. And then it would go into our operational budget, which you would see in fiscal year 28.
Other questions for Amy? All right, online?
No.
Thank you very much. Is it back to Julie? Back to Pam. Thank you, Pam.
Yes, all right. So as I mentioned before, this will be a fairly high level review of the budget, partly because of time, but also we've had a lot of additional information already discussed. So All right, so our total budget this year, including all resources and all of our requirements, is $237.8 million. This is up from $219.5 last year. Our operating revenue is 17% of our total budget at about 40 million. And the largest portion of that is payments for on-demand services. RightSource is what we were talking about before. And that's in our operational resources. Fares and passes make up now about 2% of our total overall resources. Payroll taxes, grant revenue, other revenue, and our sale of asset make up the non-operating revenue for this year. The total of our non-operating revenue sources total together is about 102 million. The largest of that is our employer-paid payroll tax at 62 million. As Julie mentioned, on January 1st of 2025, the tax rate increased to 0.8% from 0.79%. That is the last tax increase. It was set up 12 years ago, over a 10-year period. And in order to increase that, we do have to go back to the state legislature for that. So right now, all of our projections are based on that 0.8% rate until the legislature, until we request an increase. Our working capital reserves is the largest amount of our total resources at 89.2 million. The working capital reserves are required by state law to be included as a resource in our annual budget, even though we know that the majority of those resources are restricted for specific uses. Okay, next slide. For the requirements are, not surprisingly, our largest expense is personnel services. 24% of our total requirements at 57.3 million. This includes all of our wages, benefits, and contributions to the retirement plans. Our combined non-fixed route services, including RightSource, rural services, and pilot services, are 15% of our budget at 36 million. And then followed by capital investments at 31 million, which is 13% of the budget. As with our total resources, our required reserves and restricted funds also are included here, and they make up the overall largest amount of our requirements at 36%. Okay, next slide. And then here's just a picture of our reserves, and we've already seen a picture in the long-range financial plan. There's a little bit different view of that. Our total for next year's budget is anticipated to be 86.2 million. All of these funds are restricted for specific purposes other than the 2 months that we've mentioned for the general fund working capital amount, and that amount is 26.5 million. As noted in the long-range financial plan, the unrestricted working capital and sustainable services reserve will be used over the next 10+ years to support operations. Okay, next slide. Here's a little bit more detail on our combined district-wide budget. This chart shows a summary of actual and budget amounts for the district as a whole. Operating revenues are budgeted to increase overall 5%. Included here are revenues generated from the RightSource program, rural and pilot program services, fares and passes, and the event services. You may notice a large increase between the actual amounts and the budget amounts. This is in that, and that area is due to increasing demand for RightSource services, combined with our planned utilization of the STIF carryover funds for operating purposes. And that was the 4 million that Julie was talking about before. So that is new for us to be included in our operating budget, using the STIF money for operating purposes. Non-operating revenues, on the other hand, are budgeted to be flat. These revenue sources include payroll taxes, federal and state grants, interest earned, miscellaneous revenues, and sale of asset. Now, not to confuse all of the numbers again, but when I'm talking budget year to budget year. So most of what Julie was talking about in the long-range financial plan was based on where we've thought our projected estimates for this current year would be and how that informed our long-range plan into the future. So if you're wondering about, okay, that isn't exactly what they talked about before, it's because I'm comparing budget year to budget year because that's our focus for this presentation. Working capital reserves and interfund transfers make up the remainder of our district-wide resources. And and the total of that, as I mentioned, 237 million. On the other side, the operating requirements, we're budgeting to increase 9% overall of this year's budget. And again, personnel services make up the majority of that increase. Materials and services are trending now close to the CPI, and investments in capital projects and the other interfund transfers are both decreasing for next fiscal year due to timing of projects and grant match needs. So our reserves and restricted funds complete the requirements, and they are expected to increase again to the infusion of cash that we're going to put into the Sustainable Service Fund this year, and then also timing of grant drawdowns. Right, next slide. Now we'll start into each of the funds. So, okay, the general fund. General fund is our operating fund for our day-to-day operations and our service. Again, revenue sources for this include our fares, the transit district payroll taxes, federal and state grants, interest income, and miscellaneous income. Using transfers from this fund, these resources provide the support necessary to provide our non-fixed route services, also known as RightSource, and our Medicaid services, as well as the match for our grant-funded project, $7.4 million. This is approximately $6.5 million more than this year. Operating revenues are $4.6 million, or about 6% of our operating requirements. And our non-operating revenues are 75.6, or about 94% of our total revenue. Payroll taxes, as you can see, make up the largest share of the general fund resources. On the expense side, operating requirements are 77.7 million, and of that amount, personnel services are 74% of the budget, and material and services are 23% of the budget. The increase over this year is 6.6 million, and that is split approximately 20% for administration, 70% for operations, and then 10% for insurance and risk management. Transfers to the other funds are 6.8 million this year. And then the decrease in this area, as we mentioned, is related to capital projects. So total expenses and transfers is 84.5 million. Total revenue is 80 million, in case you were already looking at the math. This difference will be made up from our unrestricted working capital, which, as Julie mentioned, that will be our first to go to in our unrestricted working capital. The reserve amount here is the 2 months cash operating reserve that is required for us to be held by Oregon budget law. Okay, next slide. This is a quick personnel profile overview. So this particular graph was shown in a different format in your original materials that you got. So this looks a little bit different. It was more of a chart. In the others, we decided we liked the pie chart better. And as mentioned, our personnel service cost increases make up the largest part of our general fund increase. Between the fiscal year 24 budget, now this is 2 years ago, 24 budget and our current 25 budget, we added 29 operations positions and 11 public safety positions in the budget. At the time of this presentation, not all of those positions have been filled. So we met our goal this year of hiring at least 50 operators during the calendar year 2024. And we, as Mike mentioned, have a similar goal for 2025. Our total budgeted FTEs for this year is 417.5, which is 15.75 more than the fiscal year 25 budget. And this is made up of 11 and a half service-related FTEs and 4 administrative FTEs, and you've heard about all of those tonight. This is a 3.8% increase in workforce from our current budget. And then in your budget book on page 11, as I mentioned, you'll see a grid that will show the position details, and pages 12 through 17 in your budget book shows organizational charts for each of the major operating areas that were more how each of the operating areas, their percent and total of costs in each of those areas. Those would be the pages to look at. So, okay. Here for a long time, and actually I feel other than Joe, I feel a little bit like a long timer up here. He had 5 years. I can't beat him, but so you might have known this as specialized services. But same program, retitled mobility services. This, as mentioned, includes our Right Source program, as well as the rural services and pilot services that are funded through STIF. Some of the programs are supported specifically by the State Transportation Improvement Fund, but the other revenue sources are federal and state grants, transfers from the general fund, and as mentioned, Medicaid from our local partners, Trillium and Pacific Source. Resources that come into this fund can only be used in this fund. So no transferring out to any other funds. So, right, next slide. So the mobility services budget for next year is 16.3 million. This is approximately 1.4 million more than the current year budget. And the increase is due to planning to utilize our carryover STIF funds. So you were asking, you mentioned about the interest income. So this will be our, where's John? 8th year of STIF. Yeah, so this will be our 8th year of participating in the State Transportation Improvement Fund, and throughout those years, we've budgeted for the amounts that the state pays to us. We have, for a lot of various reasons, have not been able to spend all of that money. So we do have a carryover in our STIF of about $17 million. That amount is included in this next year's STIF budget. We do plan to put those to good use and get those out, helping us. One of the uses is our $4 million that we'll be using to help increase service. And that particular $4 million is targeted specifically to pay for the costs of hiring all the extra or additional bus operators and also the mechanics. And so we are definitely putting it to good use this next year. In this area, we also have federal grants from FTA sections 5307, 5310, and 5311 that are specifically for our rural programs and are passed through the state. The majority of this fund is spent for services provided in the Eugene-Springfield area, but also for, as mentioned before, STIF activities are rural fleet purchases, expansion and pilot projects, and the grant administration. So we did get the grant administration in on this one. So, all right, next slide. So our Medicaid fund is resources and requirements for non-emergency medical transportation services. We currently have contracts with Oregon Health Authority and the local providers, Pacific Source and Trillium. The general fund also provides a small amount of support for this program, and resources coming into this fund, as mentioned with the other one, are also restricted just for these services. Okay, next slide. The Medicaid fund budget this year will be 19.4 million. This is also 1.4 million more than the current year budget. 98% of the resources in this budget are payments for services provided. So this fund is nearly self-sufficient. And then the general fund transfer provides the remaining 2% of this resources. Okay, next slide.
Oh,
Question.
we have a question for Charlie.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know if you don't. Our expert over here is saying no. Yeah. And so, yeah. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah.
So, okay, good. All right, point-to-point fund. Coordinates and promotes alternative transportation services. It is currently the smallest fund that we have. Resources are grants and partnerships with local agencies and the general fund transfers that provide the match. Funds in these programs, again, are restricted for these services. So the budget, next slide, please. So the budget for the point-to-point is 263,000. This is approximately 400 less than the current year budget due to some of those projects are now winding down. We are participating with the City of Springfield Bike Share Program and with local school districts for the Safe Routes to Schools program. And then the van pool is in this fund. The general fund transfer is used to provide match and support administration costs in this fund. Okay, next slide to capital projects fund.
Well, I've got
Does we have a question?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, just to go back to Mr. Conrad's question about cahoots. That should not impact us from an operational standpoint. However, we have a position called community liaison, and this person is kind of looped into what's going on in our community and is able to do some other things that are connected to what we do. So in terms of making sure that people understand what resources are available where, we're in that space. We're also in the space of mapping where the all the transit stops are that relate to getting to shelters and things like that. So while it doesn't directly impact us, we're looped into that conversation around other issues that are connected there. So I'm going to bring that up. Thank you.
Okay, we're almost done. Capital Projects Fund. This is our second largest fund. This fund houses projects that result in a construction and purchase of our capital assets. Planning costs are also tracked here. Our revenue sources are grants and the general fund for match. Most grants fund 70 to 80% of the project costs. So the remaining portion is funded by either the general fund or by our state transportation fund resources. Funding is restricted in this fund to projects that have been vetted through the local, regional, and state planning processes. Okay, next slide. Total capital project budget proposal for this year is 31 million. This is 5.5 million less than our current budget due to timing of projects again. The draft community investment plan is used to prepare this budget. The transfer from the general fund for project costs not covered by grants is budgeted at 5.6 million for this next year. This is about 1 million less than the current budget. All right, next slide. And Sustainable Services Fund. Final fund in our budget is Sustainable Services Reserve Fund. This fund was established to provide a way for the district to continue operations during times of economic downturns. Each year, there will be a transfer from the general fund to ensure that the fund balance remains within the target goal of 2 to 6 months of operating costs. Oregon requires the board to review reserve funds every 10 years. So we're in the third year of this fund, so we have a few more years to go before we have to review the balance in that fund and the purpose of the fund. The FY26 budget for the Sustainable Services Reserve Fund is 1.4 million, and interest income is budgeted higher due to this projected transfer we've been talking about to this fund prior to June 30th. The purpose of this fund is just to provide protection against operating shortfalls. And each year we add to this fund a transfer from the general fund just to ensure that the balance, it stays at least 2 months of the operating costs. Okay, that's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Pam, thank you so much for walking us through $238 million. And then with that, are there any questions, both online or in the room?
Everybody would want to go home.
That's why we put it at the last, but no, it was very comprehensive. Just checking once more. Okay, well, great. If hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. Page 27.
Okay. I move to forward the proposed fiscal year 2025-26 budget as presented to the Board of Directors with a recommendation for approval.
Seconded by Linda. And if that, any comments for or against the motion? All right, hearing none, I'm going to give this a shot. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Oh, thank you. Online. Yeah. And all those against, please say nay. I have a gavel. Motion passes. Great. Well, thank you so much. I would like to conclude the meeting by thanking James staff for such an excellent presentation and walking us through the budget. President Gino Grimaldi, thank you, to you and the Board of Directors for your service to LTD. And of course, my fellow Budget Committee members, thank you. We're all volunteers here, and I just want to appreciate how much you're spending your time. And like it was said earlier by Mike, we're the outside eyes looking at this, and that is our service to the community. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting, and thank you everyone, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's how we do it.